Thank you so much for joining us here on AFCON today. And it's here on the Joy Prime channel, which is on 281 on DSTV and also on Joy 99.7 FM. My name is Nathaniel Atto. It's great to be back, and thanks to everybody else for holding the fort while, I was away doing a little bit of a U-turn around the 18-yard box. So let's get down to the big conversations this afternoon. And of course, Sami Amwesi and the man, Victor Achu Tamaklo, are here to break down the issues for us, as we've always done. We're getting closer and closer to knowing who will pick up the ultimate accolade at the Africa Cup of Nations. But there are conversations to have, especially beginning from here in Ghana. The Black Stars have a certain model that is being proposed by the politicians ahead of the general elections in December of this year. Now, former President John Dramani Mahama is proposing a model that will have a very big local component of the Black Stars team. Is this going to work? We're going to take a critical look at that. Also, we'll be taking a look at the resignation that has been rendered ineffective. Well, it's a cost-90 job, as we always like to put it here in the local parlance in Ghana. It's Samuel Eto'o remaining in office because his generals and his lieutenants at the Cameroonian FA say they will not accept his resignation. But the model and the morale behind that story is what is important. It just goes to talk about the sense of responsibility and a certain sense of patriotism that is being shown by the former Cameroon captain who's now the FA president. We'll go into that and we'll look at the implications of that as well and what he has communicated to whoever his predecessors will be and what he has generally communicated to people in leadership, not only in Cameroon, not only in West Africa, but on the whole, in the whole of Africa. A lot of peer review to be done and a lot of analysis to do this afternoon on the game. And of course, we'll be doing a little bit as we look ahead to the very big one between Nigeria and South Africa. It's a bit of a war that goes beyond the football pitch, as we always know. And there are conversations that are ongoing about security of either embassy in either country. We'll talk about all of those things right here. Packed big conversations to have here on AFCON today. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. Gentlemen, good to have you.
Thanks so much.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Well, we won't talk about the Grammys. Yeah, we are not going to talk about
Our interests lie elsewhere.
Well, but there's a Grammy element in the semifinals. We know that, right? Yeah. Because obviously
Actually,
during the...
now.
Yeah, so it's 1-0 they say, but it was a very interesting one between Nigeria and South Africa. South Africa took that one, so the Nigerians want to pick it on the football pitch. It's going to be a very massive statement, isn't it?
It will be. And I like the fact that as Africans, we try to see the lighter side of the most serious of things. AFCON semi-final, and all the talk is about light banter and all of that. It also adds to the excitement. Now you're finding the meeting points between music and football, music and sports in perhaps a more profound manner than we have ever had. But also at the heart of this is the excellence of both units that make it possible to even have the conversation of who is better, right? Because South Africa, for all the issues that they had pre-tournament, some players pulling out, the coach having to drop certain players because of injuries, naming some players who, under normal circumstances, he had no right to name them. We've told the story of Teboho Mokoena. We've spoken about Evidence Makope and how even Ethan Brooks, how they got into this South African team. Yet the manager has managed to get a tune out of the team. First time in 24 years, they've made the AFCON semis. Nigeria, they've got a beautiful story in a centre forward who's misfiring, but also the heart and soul of the team because he's dragging the team along. We've seen the story of Alassane Yusuf, who was drafted into the team as a substitute for Wilfred Ndidi, who missed out through an injury at the very last minute. But he essentially became the fulcrum of the team. And his absence after that first game through that injury essentially sparked the renaissance of the Nigerian team in the sense that the manager had to now fashion out a new way of setting up the team. And while that is not a significant improvement on what was before, it is what has led them here.
Well. Let's also look at the socio-political element of all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, in Nigeria, there are loads of issues that the people are dealing with, issues of, the general security of the people, some of the threats, of these terrorists wanting to strike in different parts of the country. Football always has a soothing element, and we saw what Didier Drogba and his teammates did during the strife in Cote d'Ivoire. This obviously is going to do something if, in the instance where Nigeria, for instance, wins. And in the instance where South Africa also win, I mean, South Africa have also had their own, I mean, from the issues of energy crisis and all of that.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that if you read the statement that was issued by the Nigerian ambassador, I think that he's just a general caution to the Nigerian citizens in South Africa. But I think, having known the history of South Africa and how sometimes they behave in some situations, and I'm thinking that Nigeria and South Africa also have their own misunderstanding and disagreement, because we've heard in the past what has happened between those both countries. But I think that, it's football. Any side can win at the end of the day. But I'm thinking that you look at Nigeria, if they win, what will do for them? You look at South Africa, when they win, what also do for the country? But I'm particularly concerned about Nigeria, because I'm thinking, even though Hugo Bruce has been able to steer this South African side onto this side, just like what I just said, in so many years. For Nigeria, we know they've already called us Egyptian record and all these things. But particularly for Nigeria, you look at how they've played. And last week I was saying that I think that they've been able to warm themselves properly into this tournament. And you saw how they played, in the round of 16, and then where they are now. And so for me, I'm thinking that particularly I'm more convinced that they might triumph over South Africa. But the backstory will be the problem, because you look at the number of people in South Africa and what happened to them. We heard when DR Congo defeated Egypt, we heard that some people were being attacked. So these things will come to play. Both sides will go on the pitch knowing that we can win. And when we win, or when I win, I know the benefit I'm going to derive. But the backstory will be the problem. And so I'm thinking that for Nigeria, they need to particularly be cautious, honestly, because South Africans, knowing the story and knowing their history, I think they need to be cautious. For South Africa, if they win, fair enough. But I wouldn't want a situation, or I'm thinking that none of us here want a situation where, should in case Nigeria triumph, and then we'll be hearing stories that citizens of Nigeria, under attack or something like that. I don't think it's really, bring that excitement of football. I think that it's rather miles the game, because it's a game of football and it's a chance that any side can win.
Well, we'll be looking at all of that into detail later on, but right now it's time to throw the focus on the Black Stars. Remember, the show is proudly sponsored by MTN. MTN, everywhere you go. We'll do a round of messages, and after that, we get into the conversation about the model being proposed by former President John Dramani Mahama on the campaign trail. He wants to see a local element, a majority local element in the Black Stars team. We'll take a look at this and how practical this could be going forward in repairing the image of the Black Stars so they could perform better and make bigger impact on the stage of the Africa Cup of Nations. This is AFCON Today. Don't go anywhere. All right, so we should have an edition where we always, bring you some of the things we discuss off air.
I always tell my friends, the best part of TV and radio is the conversations you don't get to see or hear.
Gentlemen, I'd want us to, get into the conversation now, but let's take a listen to former President Mahama, and then after that, we'll look at the AFCON squads as well that have big local components. Let's take a listen to him.
And we performed abysmally, disastrously. And we performed abysmally because we are not growing our football. Before we used to have the Colts, and every district used to organize its Colts League. And they picked the promising players from there. We used to have the academicals. The schools used to play against each other. And we picked the promising players from there. Before we come to under 17 and then all the other age groups. Unfortunately, all that has collapsed. And so we're going to work with the Football Association to start catching them young from when they are young so that we can train them and give them to local teams. They will play, get experience before, if they even want to travel abroad, they can travel. But we will build the new Black Stars based on homegrown players, domestic players who have trained together for a long time and work as a team. And then we'll bring the foreign ones to come and blend with them. If you bring only foreign players, they don't play together, they play in their individual teams, and then when it's time for competition, you bring them and come and tell them to play. It won't work. The core of the Black Stars must be made by domestic players who have played together for a long time, who keep camping them, and they keep practicing together. And then when we are going for a competition, we can bring some of the foreign players to join the domestic players, and you'll see that we'll have a better team. And so we're going to overhaul Ghana football in collaboration with the Ghana Football Association. And all the football associations from the district up, you are going to be busy because we'll send you resources so that you can hold football galas in your districts and you identify the players for us. And when you identify the players, we will give them scholarships, we'll send them to secondary school, we'll watch them as they grow and they play, and eventually they'll end up in the national teams. And so we'll do all this in collaboration with the Ghana Football Association. And then, Boko West, you say you've been left out. AstroTurfs have been distributed, you haven't got your share. You can be sure that when NDC comes, you will get your AstroTurf, a beautiful one.
AstroTurf. So Mr. Robert Coleman has to be on standby so that he, gets some of these AstroTurfs in the northern part of Ghana. It'll be wonderful. And look, there are loads and loads of wonderful talents. I mean, when you look at, the spread of players, depending on where they come from, in Ghana, it's amazing. I mean, you look at our history, you look at the Mohamed Gargos, the Abdul Razaks, name them. And, the North has also produced some very good players. But hey, guys, the local component of the Black Stars team. Let's take your initial comments and then we'll go and look at the distribution of players based on where they play.
It's not a horrible idea. The idea of having a strong local product in terms of football is something that I would always support. As we speak now, there is very little value addition in terms of the talents that we produce here. And that is why when clubs outside, in the markets that matter, want to play in our space, they don't sign from the Ghana Premier League. They don't sign from the Division 1 League. They would sign from non-league clubs. They would sign from the Coast Clubs. So they would sign from the Right to Dreams. They would sign from Cheetah FC and those clubs, ostensibly because it is believed that the players are malleable at that very young age, and they have not picked up bad habits that would have to be recoached out of them. They are malleable, they are at an age where they can educate and directly and be able to influence their development into the kind of players that they become, right? Because whichever clubs are signing the players from Ghana are also into the football business. They are not only looking for sporting success, but there is an economic aspect of it. So that player has to be able to, within a few years, realize a certain value they can monetize, right? Or value that they can convert into sporting success. So in terms of the local component of what we are producing or the players that are leaving the shores of Ghana, I will be the first to say that, look, we all need to admit that there is something wrong with the players that we are producing. What I think and what I had hoped the former president would have added was that we're not only going to create a local content dominant Black Stars, we're actually going to invest into the production of that talent, right? We will be able to invest. We're not going to live it by chance. So it is easy for people to reference how great the former Black Stars teams were, the teams that won the AFCON and all of that. But the game has moved on. The things that Ohenejan did, Ben Kofi, the concepts that they produced that delivered success for us, even as recent as the 90s, may not work today. You would have to fine-tune them to meet the ever-changing needs of the modern game. Football has become more scientific. It's a full-blown business now. So people are able to influence the talents that come, right? That come out based on the principles that they teach these kids. There are things that are bad habits that our players pick up that elsewhere would not be tolerated. So you find a situation where some of the best talents that leave the shores of Ghana walk into grade C, grade D clubs in Europe, and they can't make the cuts. Some of them are told point blank that you have been poorly educated. And there are examples. Daniel Efuyebanya, when he went to Sion in Switzerland, FC Zurich in Switzerland. It was the same thing. Abdel Fattah Issakou is one of the brightest talents that our youth system has produced in decades. But the verdict from the manager at Sporting Lisbon was that he needed to be re-educated, and it took a year and a half. Right? The first year, it didn't work out, so they sent him out to Leicester. Leicester, he started showing signs. It was until somewhere in November of last year that we could properly say that this guy is leaving behind a lot of the habits that made him, quote-unquote, an undesirable product for Sporting Lisbon, who, by the way, had made the investment. So even for the clubs that will tell you that your players are not good enough, do realize that there's a certain talent to work with. There's a certain quality to work with. So they will take a chance with you. But when they realize that it will take far more for them to get a tune out of you than they would with other players, they will quickly ditch you because they are in the business of football. So I'm saying that beyond saying that we want to have a local component in the Black Stars or a local dominate, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you only do it in a manner that is not to the detriment of the best players from Ghana. Because I don't think it would make any sense if you say that because you are fixated and you want to stay loyal to local talent, even if the best Ghanaian players are playing abroad, which is often the case anyway, you are going to sidestep them and say that you are going to introduce only local players. What I would want to see, however, is a certain commitment towards, one, generating revenue that will fund the development of football in the country. Revenue that you know is going to fuel the drive for the better products, better production of the talents that we have here. And look, we are not going to suddenly start finding world-class talents by continuing what we're doing. God has blessed us with the talent already. Some of the players that look, for any kind of profile that you're looking for, you can find them in Ghana. These kids, Drake and all of these boys Real Madrid are playing top dollar for. You can find them in abundance in Ghana. The only difference is within a year or two, there are world-class brains that are able to convert that $500,000 talent into a 25 million euro talent, so that within a year or two, he catches the attention of Real Madrid.
And
just before, and that is where I think the focus has to go to, right? That we are looking at taking away a lot of the obsolete ideas that have been training our players. It will not work. We are not going to find any more value if we continue running football the way we do. Be a bit more scientific. Be a bit more futuristic in the way we run our football, because it's not an isolated case. And that's why I'm saying that funding is a big component of it, but you need a holistic plan, a plan that will show you what our talent is and what can add value to it. A plan that will show you which people are qualified to train your kids, what level of qualification they must have, and a plan that will show you the level of investment that you're going to make into the people, because where we are now, it will take only a government intervention in terms of the brains that are training our players, because if you leave it to chance, that process may take a while. People may not even be interested in training players. They may be interested in being agents, because that is where they see the fast money or the fast routes to making money. So I'm saying that while we talk about the issue of local talent production, let's not just play lip service. We need to also recognize that the problem at hand is a hydra-headed one, and only proper commitment and the right ideas and discipline from the people who are going to spearhead this. Because it's easy when the Black Stars is the topic of the day for everyone to have an idea. But let us see people show commitment beyond the words that they say. And that commitment that I want to see has to reflect itself in the first point being finding a plan, an actionable plan with actual timelines that you roll out.
You know, I always keep, sometimes I cringe. I think it's cringeworthy that in the year 2024, many years down the line, we're still talking about having a plan, and we still seem to be running around in circles.
Yeah, because it's simple. People who are in charge are not committed enough. And people who are in charge of the game are only, I think they are only interested in what they will get back at the end of the day. And Achu has said a lot, but I'll begin my submission by giving this out. So there was a player who was part of the U20, the Blacks, satellite that won the African Youth Championship. but due to COVID, they weren't able to go to the FIFA World Cup.
Yeah.
Now, the player had the opportunity to travel. Before that, some clubs were chasing him here, but he decided not to sign for any because at that time he had an offer from Europe, and so he wanted to quickly go in and cash out. Then this club approached him, and then he was being asked to join their agency, and he said no. And they boldly told him, yeah, we know you're a good player, but if you are not joining our agency, there's no way you will have any national team to play. And since then, he was a defender, and since then, he has not been part of any of the national team. The point that I'm making is that we've been talking about plan and plan. As you said, we have the talent here, but the people handling our game don't seem to show enough commitment in bringing the best out of these players. Very young player and a 20 player. How much is it going to cost you to bring these players together, show commitment that we are growing these players for the future? The talent is here is in abundance. But the point also that I want to make is that in those years, in those days, you look at the quality that we're producing here. A player can move straight from King Faisal, go to Dortmund and play. A player can move from Liberty Professional, go to Europe and stamp his authority in the team. But we are not seeing that now because we've lost track. And it all boils down to the plan. And for me, I think that it's about time. Yes, for what the former president is proposing, I think that it's a brilliant idea. But we'll need committed people, we'll need plan, and then we'll need investment as well. I'm not thinking that he's just saying all these things. I think when it comes to investment, he's fully aware of it. Because listen, if we really want to go back to the days of how the Black Stars were playing under Nyantechi, and even also the Ghana Premier League, it's all about investment. Because listen, we can't keep on producing goal kings here or the best player in the Ghana Premier League in a year or two, and straight after that, the player is out of the country. Wherever the player goes, he can't even play. And Acho has given that, the example of Fatai Shako and then Daniel Free-Ebani. And so it's about time that I'm thinking when we invest enough here, when we have committed people in charge of the game, and when we have people who are sincere, it's not about the player, whether the player is coming from your agency or not. Once a player is good, he needs to be somewhere. You don't have to look beyond what you get at the end of the day, because what we are doing is for the country. And so what the former president is saying, brilliant idea. But I think that should he come to power, the people, whoever is going to bring in as the sports minister must force the people in charge of the game to reform. Because listen, for the government, they will come and go. The FA will be there. So this is our plan. This is how we want our football to be run. So being asked the FA, this is how we want the game to be. If they don't conform to it, you don't give them anything. And I'm thinking by that, they will conform and the right thing will be done. But again, those people whoever will come in must have that desire to do what is right. It must be committed for investment. I'm sure it's going to come from the government because I'm not sure the FA will inject their money into the game. And so if we really want to see the development of the game, want to see the Black Stars out there, investments, capital injection is very, very important. And by that, I think that we can keep, keep producing quality. Because for quality, wherever that you go in this country, every village, wherever, you can see proper talents there. But where's the investment? None. And that is what we find ourselves where we are. But for plan, I think that the plan is there. I think when Kets came to power, he didn't really want to go by what was there.
Which plan?
No, but
there's the manual. A manual was launched. A manual has been launched in recent days, and that is supposed to have, I wouldn't boast of taking the time to take a look. Well,
you're talking about
the football philosophy and the DNA.
Yes, the football philosophy and the DNA.
No,
so that is supposed to have a plan of sorts to define
we joke too much in this country.
Wait. If you should go to the FA now and ask them.
Yes, that is the document they can
That is the document they can produce for
Now,
you.
here's my problem with it. You are talking about revamping an entire country's football ecosystem. When did they model this? When did the Ghana Football Association and the Sports Ministry model this to reflect the problems that we have, and what were the results for us to trust this document?
None.
You can't just go, wake up, get into a room, scramble some document together and say, this is the idea to come and run Ghana football. Because everything that you're going to work with has to have a certain guarantee of success. We're talking about multi-million-dollar investment here. Unless, of course, what the FA is talking about is some 2x4 investment that they are requiring. If you're asking for your members' money to go and develop talent, to go and grow the sports, you need something better than that. Look, Nat, for me, there are low-hanging fruits on the side of governments, right? Be it whether it is the former president who will come back to power, whether it is the current government who will retain power. If you say you mean your words in terms of talent development, the irony of our problem is that the nonsense culture around the Black Stars, curiously, is something you have to touch. You have to take away some money from the Black Stars to develop the local contents that you're talking about. It is unconscionable that since 2004, we have received over $60 million from FIFA, and there is no evidence of that in our football. And this is done with government collaboration. Yeah. In 2014, the Jamafe Commission that was set up, a year later, the white paper that they issued suggested, in fact, it made claims that there was possible collusion between the Sports Ministry, the Ghana Football Association, and the Finance Ministry to mismanage the resources of this country through the Black Stars. After AFCON 2021, Parliament, during a probe that invited, I think, Andre, are you?
Yeah, I remember.
At that time.
I remember.
Also said something similar. If anyone means and is serious about running local football well, and with the end goal of feeding the Black Stars, first, there are low-hanging fruits. There are issues around the Black Stars that you need to touch. We cannot continue spending... And here's the thing. If you look at the country's budget for sports, the other time I said it on this show that over 80% of that goes into compensations and salaries. The only time this country spends any significant money is when the Black Stars are playing, be it qualifiers, be it main tournaments, whatever it is, pre-tournaments. That is the only time we get enough money from the Black Stars. And I'm saying that you cannot say you are serious about running football if your attitude towards football is this way. We need to be able to stop this rotten management culture. So to the former president, to the current vice president who wants to be future president, to anybody who wants to run this country, the way we have managed the country's resources in terms of football development is poor. It's unacceptable.
Very well.
We need to see a certain willingness to deviate from norm, but also more importantly, streamline things and come to a point where there is a holistic plan, there is a long-term plan to run this game, to even define what talent is, and define who qualifies to teach and develop that talent, under what context, with what revenue. We often talk about how we have introduced, and this government says a lot about the youth resource centers and the AstroTurfs that they have built. How accessible are those facilities? They are not supposed to be built in isolation. Mm-hmm. And I think I heard the former president also say that they are going to continue because it's a good idea. Yes, we want infrastructure, but there needs to be a link between the infrastructure that you have put in place and the people who can actually use that facility. Now, which is the nearest AstroTurf to you?
Well. Maybe in Nigeria, Ghana.
Not just to you.
I just remembered. Well, that's a private initiative, and it's, it's an educational institution called
everyone,
Academy.
To everyone,
it's like 3 minutes drive from
to everyone listening to us, think of the nearest AstroTurf to you.
Yeah, so
and think of
my situation is 3 minutes drive, but obviously
how accessible it is to the talents who need it. Think of the football clubs that exist in your locale and where they train and who train them. So what is the impact of these? And we're spending tons of money, millions of dollars on these facilities. Of what use are these facilities if the people that we say we are building them for, till date,
cannot have
are not?
access, yeah.
We recently opened the Koforidia facility. What has happened to that facility? Who uses that facility? So the conversation needs to be streamlined. If we say we want to do A, we need to look at the value A brings us and how we can get that value from A. It is not enough just throwing money about on youth resource centers. It is a laudable idea, right? There are others like Sami Kufo who have raised questions about even the idea of AstroTurfs and and essentially criticize it. We saw the deputy sports minister who went to Morocco.
Yeah.
He was in tears, and he was admitting that the astroturfs that we have built in Ghana, the facilities that his office, the sports ministry, were supposed to exercise oversight responsibility and determine whether and what kind of quality meets their standards. They failed at their job. He went to Morocco to go and cry and say that after what he's been exposed to, the facilities in Ghana are 10 years behind.
Well, 10 years behind. And we'll be going to this in a bit. But, that is a very interesting element of the conversation, because, you see, if we need to go, or we're trying to go into which is modern and which is not, then we're not going to do anything at all. Because you
essentially
speak to
what
some of the
fits
people,
purpose.
Yeah, so you speak to some of the people who, run these outfits that build infrastructure and all of that, and they'll tell you that, yes, all of these are available. For instance, I asked my good friend, and he's a good friend of the brand, Robert Coleman. I mean, he's number one when it comes to building these facilities. And he'll tell you point blank. The other day, I was asking him about the use of Deso fiber, for instance. The first time I saw Deso fiber was at Anfield, where they had mixed natural grass and artificial grass. And this is how come now when a player goes in for a very deep tackle, it doesn't bring out the soil together with the grass. I mean, this is something we used to see back in the time. Yeah. But this time, you just slide nicely on the grass, and it's, it's still very intact, okay? And the question, and then he gives you the figures of the square meter of one piece of Deso fiber as against having like a full AstroTurf. So there are issues of our economy, the strength of our economy, and what our pockets can. So we'll be putting all of that in context as we go along. But let's now quickly take a look at the fine spread of local content, as in local or home-based players in some of the national teams that are playing at the ongoing Africa Cup of Nations tournament. So we start off with South Africa. Obviously, when it comes to strength, it's not surprising to see 11 players from Mamelodi Sundowns who, in the last 5 years have been dominant on the stage of the CAF Champions League and all of that. Now, you also look at 7 from Orlando Pirates. So out of the whole squad, they have a total of, they have a total of 18, beg your pardon. Okay. All right, so there we go, 18 of them. Okay, now let's come to Egypt, who have been known to do the homegrown or live the homegrown theory. So there we go. Egypt have Al Ahly, Pyramids FC, and Zamalek. 9 players from Al Ahly, 9 from Pyramids, and 4 from Zamalek. Interestingly, Zamalek seem to have a relatively low number this term. Okay, so 9, 18 plus 4 makes it 22. 22 players in the Egyptian squad have these players from home. Well, it's not too surprising because they've got a very strong local league. Now, Tanzania, Young Africans, 7, Simba FC, who've also been, both clubs have been very prominent on the stage of the CAF Champions League. So 7 and 6, we've got 13 there. Now, Zambia have Power Dynamos and Zesco United, giving us a total of 6 players in the full squad. Now, in Angola, it's Petro Atletico, have a lot of tradition, and are producing 5 players for their national team. Mauritania come in with 4 players from Nouadhibou, and also DR Congo's TP Mazembe, who obviously have been also a very present team when it comes to the biggest club competition on the continent. They've been there, and here they are, DR Congo with 4 players. Now, Club Africain from Tunisia have 3, and Namibia have
African Stars.
3 from African Stars. So this is how the spread looks like from other countries who are playing. So we're just trying to do some peer review to see, who is doing what. And so this is what we see here. Well, out of all of these, you obviously only have South Africa standing. South Africa making a very big case for those 18 players that they have sent.
The Tanzania number could have been more, except for the fixation. Let's just say fixation, because we don't want to offend people. Because they went to the AFCON or came to the AFCON with 5 non-league players from the English system. How do you tell me that of those 5 non-league players from the English system, you couldn't find local talent who would give you better value than those players? it makes no sense. Because the idea that we can go into the English fourth tier or the English non-league system and pick players from our African national teams. And Tanzania have got a pretty decent local league. So if you can find players that will give you the quality that those players have got, then you might as well collapse the league. You might as well not play the league. And the issue with quality manifested itself in the very first game of the tournament. One of those players had to be hooked after 38 minutes, not only because he wasn't good, but he simply could not cope with the intensity of the game.
Very well.
I mean, I would just look at South Africa, and it seems to me I'm not that surprised because I think for about 32 years now, I think they've dominated the continent in terms of the CAF Champions League, CAF Champions League, and then CAF Confederations Cup. Even the recent African Super League,
African Football League.
African Football League. Thanks. And already Sundowns were crowned champions, and so it doesn't seem surprising. I think they are basically doing something right there, of which we are not doing, because you can't take 18 players. In the case of Egypt, they took 22 players, local players there. But then for even Hugo Bruce to make a case that whether you are playing for PSG or whether club that you're playing, if I think you are not fitting into my project, I'll leave you out and even bring in a local player. It clearly tells us that South Africa are doing something right. And you could see even the coaches that they are producing this time around, and look at the money that they are injecting into the game and how that investment that they are doing there has translated, I mean, when it's come to continental football. For me, I'm not surprised. But in the case of Ghana, we took 3 players there, if I'm right. Is it 2?
3.
3 players there. And I think that's why I feel that it's a total disrespect to Richmond Lamptey. Because prior to the tournament, we saw his performance here locally. And even when Ashimero went out, everybody thought that he's a perfect replacement for Ashimero. But he was nowhere to be found on the bench. He was in the stands. And that's why, even for me, I made that conclusion that the friendly game that we played against Namibia at the Barra Sports Stadium, that was a fine opportunity to test him. But he didn't even, I mean, not even a single minute at all.
And I feel that psychologically as well, it would have done Lamptey a great deal of good because that turf and that terrain is one he's very used to.
But let's be practical here, right? This is a player in the 10 months prior that Chris Hughton had coached the team, had not been invited. Not for friendlies, not for the AFCON qualifiers, not for the World Cup qualifiers, which I think we've played 2 games already.
Yeah.
We know that Richmond Lamptey got into the team because of the constituency behind him.
That's true.
Not because.
But the same as, Jonathan Sowa and then they defend,
Exactly.
Amidou.
So for the players who came from the Ghana Premier League, we know that it is because of the local constituency behind them that they got selected into the team. If for a player who the technical team in the 10 months prior have not thought to be good enough, I think it is unrealistic to expect that they would suddenly break into the team, right? There is that. The other thing also for me is, look, let's ditch this idea that a coach needs to apologize to a certain player for dropping him. It is the national team.
Well,
the coach determines who plays.
Before you go on, there's something worrying that you've brought up, that there's a constituency behind the whole Richmond Lamptey idea.
And I'll address
there. Put him there, and let everybody else keep quiet. But if that is what we want to do, then it goes to hurt us.
So I'll address that. But just on the issue of Lamptey and other players who we feel once a coach has called them and hasn't played, the coach needs to. Nobody owes anybody an apology. Even if you are Bedi Pele, even if you are Mohamed Kudus, you're not entitled to play for the Black Stars. Yes, we can look at it and say, based on the needs of the team and the unique skill sets that you have, there are tactical contexts that you can thrive in and bring some value to the team and improve the team, right? But the coach ultimately makes the call on who plays. If the coach, in his assessment of the team, feels that there is a disconnect between your skill set and the balance of the team. That's his word.
But actually,
Right?
I just want to ask something.
Hugo Bruce, when he named Teboho Mokoena in the team, evidence Makopa, check their numbers before the AFCON. But in the end, the coach has found a way to get the tune out of them. And for the first time in over 2 decades, they've sent South Africa to the semis of the AFCON. Even if it didn't work, I would respect the coach's decision, but criticize him for it. But this idea that once certain players are called, they have to play at all costs, failing which we have to apologize to them or the coach owes them an apology, is wrong. Because when you do that, you encourage this sense of entitlement that it makes some players feel like. And you see, it's a dangerous path to tread on because in the past, we've had certain players, Alfred Duncan, in his letter, essentially referenced the fact that he had been played in the positions that he was not comfortable with. You don't want to entertain this idea where every player feels that, as for me, I would only play if you allow me to play in my favorite position. Your usefulness to the team is only for as long as you are prepared to do the job the coach has assigned you.
But we are also the same set of people who come and sit here and on other platforms to criticize the coaches when
when
they get it wrong.
When they play players out of their positions.
That is our job. Our job is to question.
No, but we need to be fair here. We also need to be consistent. Because,
we will.
For instance, hold on.
Yeah.
For instance, I mean the Kodja Samoa conversation and how he's been used in the Black Stars and how he's not been used in the Black Stars. We've had quite a number of instances as well. Even the Jordan conversation. For a very long time, fans were not understanding. We weren't really getting it and all of that. So I think that from our end as well, we need to balance it a little bit in asking of the coaches what they should be doing with the players.
I think
we have to be consistent. So
I'm only saying that let's look at it as dissenting views. Everything I say, everything you say, everything the fan out there, the pastor, all of these views that we share about what is the right decision for a coach in terms of the deployment.
All I'm just saying is that we shouldn't be putting our dissenting views just for the sake of being on that side.
No, I understand you. I'm just saying that the danger with a player getting to tell and determine how he plays, where he plays, it far outweighs fans putting pressure on a coach to make a call. Because players are very funny, they are just like all of us. When we realize that we can get away with something, we will do it. And you don't want, when you encourage a situation where every player gets to choose when they play and how they play, that's anarchy, that's chaos. But to the point of the issue of consistency, let's be careful in our advocacy for the best local talent in order not to present it as a them against us situation. The reality is this. The best of local talents will not stay in Ghana. When you...
That's the fact.
Yes.
Yeah,
when you grow the game and develop your best players, because the football market out there, the biggest players in the football market will far outspend the clubs in Ghana. So when we actually develop and we get the best of talents, the Mohamed Kudus and Andre Ayus,
they will always go.
They will always go. But that does not in any way say or mean that we should not develop talents, for me. And the reality is this: the best of Ghanaian players will always play abroad.
And the neutralization effect will be when we grow our structures to go towards replicating what the likes of Egypt and South Africa have done. Agreed on that.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, let's get into the conversation around Samuel Eto'o in a little bit. But remember, you're still here on AFCON today. It's live on Joy Prime and also on Joy 99.7 FM. The show is proudly sponsored by MTN. MTN, everywhere you go. Here with me in studio are Victor Achutamaklo and Samia Mwesi. All of them are faces, the names that you see in-house with our sports platforms in terms of analysis. Well, we'll be jumping into the Cameroon conversation at this time. You know, Samuel Eto'o, as president of the FA, has had quite an interesting, run at the Africa Cup of Nations. One moment, it looked like they were packing bag and baggage, and then the next minute, it looked like they were going to continue. And then, finally, the big blow was dealt when they played against their sworn rivals, Nigeria. Now, at the helm in terms of coaching is Rigobert Song, a man whose credentials in the game as a player can never, ever be questioned. And the sense of patriotism, the sense of urgency that he displayed, as well as the sense of discipline, cannot be questioned. Same for Eto'o. But now the two find themselves on different ends of the administrative tables and have to deliver a certain mandate, as the people of Cameroon have always lived on and expected. So, the Cameroonian FA say they are not accepting this resignation. Let's begin with you, Sam.
Well, I think I'll look at it from two perspectives. You remember when they were going to play against Nigeria in the round of 16 game, I cited and I told you, should they exit the pressure that it will come on both Eto'o and then Rigobert Song? At the end of the day, Song is out of office. But for Eto'o's issue, this is why I think that, I'll look at it from two different perspectives. I'm thinking that he tendered in that resignation letter because they've hosted the tournament, they didn't win it. They went to, Ivory Coast, exited the round of 16. It doesn't really paint a good picture. And then the second aspect for me is that I think that he's had more training outside this continent. And so he had that belief that, listen, you can't be in that position forever. When it doesn't go well, be bold and then accept responsibility and apologize and move on. And whoever comes in the end to take over the job, it's up to that person. But then even during the tournament, we had stories, players complaining, rift even between him and then the other guys in there. But for me, I think that whatever has happened at the end of the day, the executive council says that, we want you to stay. I think that if he's going to stay, he really needs to rewrite the wrongs. I think that he needs to correct those wrongs. I don't know where those wrongs are, but particularly, I'm sure that looking at how he came to office, and even you could remember sometimes, I think last year there were some audios and some tapes about match fixing and all these things. I think that it's a collective job. You need to bring people together. You need to have the backing of some people. But for Rigobert Song, I think that I cited and I said that he can be a very good player. He can be a very good, whatever it is. But when you can't be that good coach, just like in the case of Maradona. And that's why he's out.
And that's why we need to always salute the memory and honor the memory of the likes of Franz Beckenbauer, and also salute the living Didier Deschamps for that sterling example. Salute and bless the memory of Stephen Keshi as well. They have taught us slightly different lessons about playing well and coaching well as well. They are in the minute minority, if I may put it that way. Guys, just 14 seconds, if you can, on this particular matter. I know there's an extensive conversation we need to have about it. But
let me say it in the...
Is there something we're not seeing when it comes to this particular matter?
Let me say it in a proper local parlance. It be settings.
Okay, look, that's what I wanted to hear from you.
Because Samuel Eto'o is very educated in the politics of sports. If you look at his career trajectory, spent time at Real Madrid, spent time at Barcelona. Under who? So he has seen firsthand the game of politicking and issues of presidency and elections.
Yeah.
If Eto'o meant to resign, nobody would talk him out of it. The Samuel Eto'o that we've been exposed to is very determined, very cuzzered individual who would not take a decision and then suddenly rescind that decision. I think that Eto'o made that move because he was aware that the walls were closing in. And Samuel Eto'o knew that issues like the match fixing scandal, and that tape was rather public, have taken away a bit of the credits that he has. There is a credible opponent in Jeremy Njitap. There are others who have probably not shown their face well, but Njitap is moving slowly. And we're beginning to see certain constituencies per report in Cameroon that are giving him credibility.
But thing is that Achu, he said he wanted to step down, and the people said, don't go. That reminds me, Achu, that reminds me of, one of these old trending videos on social media where one of these pastors said he wanted to go to heaven, and the congregation had...
They begged him. They begged him. They begged him not to go to heaven.
He wanted to go to heaven, and they prevented him from going. That's very interesting.
A man
in
of
Ghana.
God, after the image of heaven, men of God have painted to us. Nobody would allow anybody to stop him from going to heaven.
How you doing?
Great.
Good to see you. What are the philosophers saying about today and the statistics you want to bring us on Nigeria's record and that of South Africa?
Then we just have to go to the great Sir Alex Ferguson.
Great.
And his quote that is being parroted around all the time, that attack wins you games and defense wins you titles. So I've gone to sit down and look at some trends, and I'm coming to look at how, if the winner, when Nigeria takes on South Africa, from the trends I've looked at, the winner from that game is most likely to win the title because of what has happened in the last 5 editions. So let's start from Nigeria's title win in 2013.
Very well.
In that run, they just scraped through the group stages after being able to beat only Ethiopia after drawing their first 2 games. Went on to beat Burkina Faso 1-0 in the final. In that run, they conceded 4 goals and scored 11. So let's move on to 2015. Ivory Coast beat Ghana in the final on penalties. In that run, they also scored 9 goals and conceded 4. We are building a trend like that. 4-4. Then we go to 2017. Cameroon. They conceded 3. That is reducing. The goals conceded is reducing by 1. And after they also scored 7 goals, all of them in 6 games. Then in 2019, Algeria, in 7 games, they scored 13 goals and conceded just 2. We've gone from 4-4 to 3-2. In 2021, again, Senegal, they won it by beating Egypt on penalties and scored 9 goals and conceded just 2. In 2013, Nigeria kept 4 clean sheets. 2 clean sheets, rather. The same for in 2015 for Ivory Coast. In 2017, Cameroon, they conceded just 3 goals and kept 4 clean sheets. Then 2019 and 2021, Algeria and Senegal kept 5 clean sheets. We've built a trend. If you are conceding goals, you must concede from 2013 4, 2015 4, 2017 2, and in 2017 3 rather, in 2019 2, 2021 2. It means that the team that is going to win the title must concede this year, must concede at least 3. And in this tournament,
At most.
At most 3, at most 2, not 3. If the team that is to win the title must concede at most 2 goals, and South Africa and Nigeria are the only 2 teams up to this point that has conceded only 2 or 1. Nigeria has conceded 1 and South Africa 2. So if you're looking at their defensive structure, South Africa and Nigeria are leading all the stats, all the metrics. If you are going into tackles made, Calvin Bassey and Motiba and Vala, they are leading all those interceptions and clearances. So if the team that is able to win the tie between South Africa and Nigeria will likely win the title. So this is the trend I've just presented in this.
Very well, very well. Okay, guys, you know what? We'll continue the conversations tomorrow, but where do you want to go? You want to get down and we'll stop you, or? You have a wonderful one. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks to MTN for sponsoring the show. We'll be back tomorrow with another show here on Joy Prime and on Joy 99.7 FM. Thanks to the whole crew. Thanks to the whole production team. My name is Nathaniel Atto, and I have love for sport.